wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
The brother Malcolm Jenkins. Welcome, brother.
Appreciate y'all having me. How y'all doing?
I'm blessed, black, and highly favored. How you doing, my brother?
Doing well.
Malcolm got a new book out called What Winners Won't Tell You. I love that title. Break that title down.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times we see people who have a lot of success, who are champions, and we hold them up high, but oftentimes we don't see, what makes them that way. And oftentimes we kind of glorify that process, and we look at the end, the end result. But for me, I've always been a bridge builder and wanted to make sure that I contextualized the 13-year career that I just finished, all of the things that I've kind of accomplished by showcasing like that journey, that process, that evolution of, a man into what you see now. And really that's to me, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to live. You want to have impact on things. You want to leave people with breadcrumbs to that success. And so I kind of open up. The reason I don't have a shirt on the cover is because it's a very vulnerable memoir. It's one of the things where I show kind of the failures, the process, how I developed, into the person I am today.
Nobody likes to show that no more.
You played in the NFL. You're a former NFL player. You got drafted with New Orleans, and then you played for the Eagles.
Boo.
You got that cowboy shirt on.
Is this shirt like kryptonite to you?
No, not at all. not at all. We know what's going to happen at the end of the year.
You going to the Super Bowl?
I don't know.
He says that every year.
Yeah,
every year he says that, but
this the year.
What year is that ring
You
from?
said that last year.
1996.
He said that last year. Said that last year. Now, what made you want to write this book now? You talk about the winning and the losing and being so open and vulnerable. What made you want to write the book at this time?
Yeah, so, one of the things as an athlete, your life is usually documented by other people. Mm-hmm. Everybody else writes about you, talks about you, and we rarely get to hear the athlete talk about their own experience and contextualize it for themselves. I got 2 young daughters, that I think a lot about what I want to leave to them, how I want them to view me. And so I figured it was better for my story to be told from my own words. So I ended up writing the book myself. Cover to cover is all me. And it's one of those things that I'm always involved in everything I do. So, for me, it's one of those things that, again, everybody doesn't get to see what goes into the process, that goes into the mindset, the cerebral parts of not only football but life, the failures. And I think that's always been important for the people I know who are watching me to see that part of it. Because that's the difference. Most of the time you'll see somebody at the top and you think you can't get there. You seem so different, so far from your example. And hopefully this kind of closes that gap for the reader to see no, these people who have success are just like you. They go through trials, they go through tribulations. It's those who continue to fight, those continue to play. The idea, that life is this journey. You don't, especially with sports, I think life is like a game. We tend to only enjoy life or the game after we've won. The victory is when you get to enjoy life. But really the winners will tell you that you enjoyed playing the game. In life, you have to enjoy where your feet are, enjoy the process, regardless of the results. And really that's how I've lived my life. That's how I've grown to have success, and I try to live that every day.
I love in the book you talk about a lot of the things you did as far as in the social justice space, because you were the head of the Players Coalition. When it comes to social justice and being an athlete, what's the balance?
Man, it's, one of the things we had to do was find what our role was, because we're not the experts. We're not devoting our lives to be activists, but we do have a role, as role models and a platform to do something. And I think one of the things that we found to be very useful was to place ourselves as conveners. We can bring communities to politicians, to police. We can use all of the attention that we get to put pressure on, those who are in power, especially in our local markets. And that's really how we formulated, Anquan Bolden and myself, formulated the Players Coalition as a vehicle for athletes all over the country. If you say, I want to get involved, with the things going on in my community, you want to get involved with politics in whatever, you want to lobby, here's the education on the issues locally, here's who you need to push on, here's people of power, and then here's some resources to put those things together. So, we kind of worked through that on our own, and then once we figured out the plan or figured out what worked, we just held the door open for anybody who wanted to come. It started with a group of about 12 athletes, and now it's expanded to 12 professional leagues of sports, which is far greater than anything I could have imagined when we started it. Having impact with, grassroots organizations all the way up to, politics.
What are some of the accomplishments that the Players Coalition did that we didn't hear about?
So the majority of the work was like, hey, all right, talking about the negotiation with the league and things like that. But what we were able to turn that into, so specifically my focus was in Pennsylvania. One of the things I was most proud of was we pushed for a bill to get passed called the Clean Slate Act. Mm-hmm. And most people don't know 1 in 3 people in America have some kind of criminal record. Mm-hmm. And so what this did was roll back or expunge those records after 10 years if you hadn't violated for nonviolent offenses. And we were like, that's a low-hanging fruit. Let's get that out the way. But that ended up affecting like over 3 million people across the state of Pennsylvania. So that affects how what jobs you can get, where you can live. And that's a very low-hanging fruit when it comes to policy. In New England, guys were doing things. They lobbied to get a bunch of millions of dollars put into the school system to close the digital divide, getting computers and things like that. So these are happening all over the country: Louisiana, Florida, Ohio, all the way to Cali, and it's being done not only by me but obviously by athletes all over.
Now, when players were kneeling at one time, how did you guys support the players, if at all?
Yeah, well, I was raising my fist, and I was one. That's how the Player Coalition kind of came to about, and I talk about it in the book, just about like that moment, everybody wanting to figure out what to do, but not quite agreeing, which seems to be over the time of history a common thread. Like people having the same ideals, a bunch of people being very passionate about pushing Black people forward or getting involved, but having differences of agreement, differences of opinion and strategy. But my biggest thing was always about the work. I'm like, whoever is about, making a change and putting in the time and effort to do it, let's collaborate, let's work together. And we've been doing that over the course of now, coming up on a decade.
I feel like you took a lot of heat back then.
Yeah.
Eric Reid called you a sellout. Y'all had if you watch football, your famous confrontation, during the game, before the game as well. Like, have y'all been able to have a conversation since then?
No, and a lot of people, even in those times were like, hey, man, you need to reconcile that. You need to squash that. But I've always maintained that, I never wanted to be, besides that, and I was very disappointed after that game in myself because I gave the media that image. The last thing I wanted was 2 Black men fighting over, trying to save their people or trying to help their people. It's counterintuitive. It doesn't work. And so for me, I've always maintained that, like, I'm proud of the work that they did. I'm proud of, all of us were trying to figure it out at that time. But it's not me. It's not on me to reconcile the situation. Like, I never had a problem. I don't hold any gripes. I was always focused on the work. I knew that regardless of how, I was feeling, the things that were coming down to me, the things that people were saying, my focus was always on the people. I got into this not, to lift myself up. So my feelings didn't matter. It was like, okay, what's the goal here? And it's to help. So all of that to me was distractions. And I had to stay focused on the goal, why I was there, why, I put myself in that position, and just maintain.
What was your thoughts on everything that's going on with Colin Kaepernick and everything that's happening right now? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's confusing at this time. It's almost 7 years away. It's you almost want him to just kind of like stand on his legacy. I think the way that it's being approached now and the way that it's being kind of laid out, it almost it's like worrisome. It makes me a little worried.
What you mean?
I mean, you're talking about, somebody who's once playing in a Super Bowl that's down like begging to be on the practice squad. 7 years after later, it's, forget the politics or who he is. Any athlete that's out of the game for 7 years and is still begging to be on the practice squad is concerning to me. It's that now being on the other side of retirement and having to deal with that identity change myself, it's a strong thing that he's dealing with. And you worry about like, okay, how does one handle transitioning into the next phase of life, the next chapter, because that one's done. Like, you can't play football forever. So we need to see, what that next example is. And it's with so many people following him, I think we all want to know, like, all right, what's that next move? Some
people would say that, he's been playing similar to you, I'm sure, since you were 3 years old. So that's all that you know and love. And maybe on the bucket list was playing in the Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl, I should say. So for some people who say maybe he hasn't got that off yet. And then some people would say, like even Charlamagne has mentioned that he feels like that letter was kind of like an embarrassment and a disgrace that, you go from pro athlete to Super Bowl contender to practice squad.
No, I don't think anybody want to win a Super Bowl that bad. I don't think it's about the Super Bowl. Because that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about just getting on the roster. But who knows? I think that's the one thing that leaves the concern is we don't know what the motivation is.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that one is chasing a Super Bowl. I think it comes down to and I'm watching it in many teammates of mine. Like even I don't know if you saw Kelsey. Mm-hmm. Jason Kelsey did a documentary about his life last year. He was trying to decide if he wanted to play or not. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, he goes through all of these things that he loves most: his family, his wife, his health. But he is so afraid of moving on to something else. He says, I can't imagine myself being the best in the world or anything else. And so he decides to come back. He's obviously playing again this year. Mm-hmm. And I watched it. Most people applauded. I watched it in fear because here you are saying all the things that you value most, you're willing to sacrifice because you're afraid of stepping into the unknown.
Damn.
And I think that's one of the things that, like, I know for me, the opening chapter in my book is fear. I've learned to always, like, step into the things I'm afraid of. And that's how I knew I was ready to step away from the game. Is because the only thing that was holding me there, I had made enough money, my body was healthy, I was focused on other things, but the only thing really keeping me there was the fact that I was afraid to step into the unknown of, I've been playing football since I was 7, same type of thing. But for me, my response is to lean into that. So I think there is a lot of that going on with athletes right now, and I think with Kaepernick being who he is and what he means to, especially our people, I think, we always want him to be the example, but I think it's a great kind of reminder that everybody's human, everybody's dealing with their own stuff.
And oftentimes too, when you don't let go of something, you block a lot of your blessings. You never know what the future is going to hold if you keep holding on to the past. Yeah,
I never thought I would write a book.
Wow.
Never in my life thought I would write a book.
Wow.
And it wasn't until you start to let go of these ideas of who you're supposed to be and these limitations we've kind of put on ourselves, and you lean into the unknown and say, well, okay, I can't tell myself I can't do this until I've proven myself, until life proves that I can't do something. I have to always assume that I can. And for me, it's just always about like trying to expand, the human experience as much as possible. I'm a forever learner. I'm curious about everything. Mm-hmm. And the more you learn, the more you do, you start to realize, that there are no limitations, that any of the problems that you have in your life, you are going to be the base of that solution. And, and that's a journey. It's not easy to get there. That takes a lot of trial and error.
I love how you started chapter 2. You started with a quote: "We must all suffer one or two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret." Which one did you suffer the most?
I think I suffered both until I learned, the pain of discipline. I think I think I've gotten so much more comfortable in the pain of discipline than the pain of regret. Both hurt though, and I think especially when you talk about like even love is one of those things. Is I've come to find love is like an action word. I take love out as a noun in my vocabulary because we often love in feelings, but to really love somebody or even love yourself, it looks like discipline. It doesn't. We'll look in the mirror and say, I feel good about myself, so I love myself, or I feel confident, so I must love myself. And so we love everybody else with feelings, but when you start to just look at actions, like what are the things you do to love yourself? Okay, do you have discipline with what you eat, how you work out, how you take care of yourself? Do you go places you don't need to? Are you reading? Are you cultivating these parts of yourself? Those things are uncomfortable. They take discipline, but they always expand who you are. They help you grow. They help you go to where you're trying to get to. And I think a lot of the times we try to avoid the being uncomfortable. We try to avoid that discipline and end up just still being uncomfortable with the results because we regretted not having that, not taking advantage of those times. So for me, I'm always trying to focus on, the end goal, doing those small things daily that starve yourself maybe sometimes of some enjoyment, but at the same time, you're moving in a direction you want to go.
Now, you mentioned earlier you had 2 daughters, and I always ask athletes when they come up here, if you did have a son, would you want your son to play in the NFL?
I don't think I would have a desire for him to play. If he wanted to, for sure, I got all the keys to show you how to get there and stay there. It's a dangerous sport, but everything is dangerous. And I think one of the things about me, that first half of my career, I would get these nagging injuries. My neck, I talk about in the book, I had to get a bunch of epidural shots in my neck. I'm like, I thought those were just for
women pregnant.
Women, yeah, I was getting them in my neck to play football. You're on heavy kind of anti-inflammatories, things like that. So they're the negative things. But when I stopped trying to hurt people in a game, I stopped trying to punish my defenders, I stopped getting hurt.
Wow.
And I played 8 seasons straight with no injuries, which is absurd in the NFL. So there is a way to play the game. There's a way to kind of move about it, take care of yourself that is safe. But obviously, it's a violent sport. But the things that I've learned from playing football are things that, you know, have made me who I am. I think they give me an advantage in any situation. You know, you talk about, you know, stepping away from the game and being, since 7 years old, you've been trained to be a leader. You've been trained to problem solve. You've been trained to go through processes, to evaluate yourself, to evaluate your opponent, fail, do it all over again, like live on routine. Like all of those things are things that when you get out into the world, you see regular people, CEOs all the way down, struggle with. Yet we've been equipped to do this and been kind of trained to do that. So, I you know, it's a trade-off. You know, I think some of those things are good, some of them bad. It's just up to, if I had a son, it would really be up to him.
Gotcha.
And you know, Tom Brady wrote the foreword of your book. Explain that relationship, because I would never have wrote a foreword if I was Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were looking, obviously we titled it, you know, What Winners Won't Tell You, Lessons from a Legendary Defender. And we're kind of like, all right, well, who do we get to write the foreword? And Tom's name came up, and I'm like, guys, like I've been trolling Tom about this Super Bowl for a few years now. Like, I don't know if Tom is going to write it. But, you know, when I think about as a defender, who was my favorite opponent, it was Tom Brady. Love playing Tom. He always brought the best out of me as a player. And, you know, he's the greatest of all time. So I just kind of shot my shot, shot him a text, and he obliged. You know, it was kind of the cherry on top of the book. Definitely, you know, a stamp. I appreciated him for that.
Did y'all have a relationship before that? Or?
Really just a mutual, you know, relationship. Respect as like an opponent, being peers in the league. But no, we're not like friends. We don't hang out. So this is really just based off of like, I see you, you see me type of thing.
Now, you said he's the greatest of all time.
I do, yeah.
So you stand by he's the greatest quarterback of all time?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
Because he does the ordinary better than everybody.
Ooh.
Like, I look at Aaron Rodgers and I'm looking at his skill set like, okay, Aaron Rodgers is probably the tougher one to play because he has a skill set that really nobody else has. Like, on the field, it's hard. But Tom, like, he's not faster than everybody. People have better arm talent. You know, there have been other cerebral quarterbacks, but it's like, well, why is he having the success he has? And it's because of his process. He does all the ordinary things better than everybody else.
Ooh.
And I think that to me is like the cheat code of life. Like, there's always going to be people with God-given talent, but you master the things that don't take talent and watch how far it goes.
I feel like, man, what you just said makes so much sense, because when you look at the people who have God-given talent, they usually do the basics better than everybody. Like, they usually do something as simple as practice harder than everybody.
Yeah, I mean, think about, you look at Steph Curry, Jordan, all these
Kobe
people like
Bryant,
Kobe, they talk about
Bron,
practicing.
Yeah.
Like, they
Jordan,
don't talk about like, I gotta, you know, I can jump high, so I just jumped over. No, they doing the very simple things over and over and over again, and we only see it in the game like, oh, this is crazy. And you don't realize he just been doing this same drill since the age of 7.
Right.
And so now it's like clockwork. It's body, you know, it's a muscle memory. And I think that's something I've always been fascinated in and try to do myself, is like, what can I, you know, instead of trying to be the best at some God-given talent or do these amazing things, like, how do you just do the ordinary better than everybody else?
Absolutely.
Now, you were just inducted into the Ohio State Hall of Fame, so congratulations.
Appreciate that.
Now, just if you could go back and change it, because, you know, we talk about all the things you stand for now, would you prefer, or would you have rather went to a HBCU?
Both of my parents went to North Carolina A&T. I think going back, no, it was a different time, right? I think right now, the way that there's attention on it, there's people willing to put resources behind the programs, and all this happened, of course I would now. You know, I think back then, you would have just kind of been selling yourself short. It's like you need the entire environment.
You need the eyes. You need the coaches to come see.
It's
You
not
need
just one player coming. You need the coach. Like what Deion was doing, you know, for HBCUs was a movement. And that's something what we wanted to see. That's what would have made it, you know, appetizing for me as an athlete. And, you know, but I do look at these athletes now who were doing it. Like, I wish the environment was like that when I was coming out.
We have those conversations, man. But I keep thinking, I want people to remember Deion's an anomaly, man.
He is.
Like, Deion was one of the biggest stars in the world. Because it's not like Eddie George is coaching.
Right.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? Like we could be supporting Eddie George.
It's a few, yeah.
It's because it's Deion.
Yeah.
Like, that's what, it's not,
Is it Hugh Jackson's coaching too, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's not the only one, but it is the Deion effect for sure. It's not just the on-field stuff and coaching. It's the attention you're bringing, the message that you're bringing, the pride and kind of, you know, the showmanship that you bring to it too. You gotta make it cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did your trip to Ghana influence your advocacy?
Yeah.
Or just change your life, period?
It changed everything. You know, you start to, I think all of us have a bit of an identity crisis at some point. You know, if you're African American, you want to know where you came from. And at the lowest point in my life, it was like one of the most critical moments in the book. I needed to get away, and I was like, I always wanted to go to Africa, so I went to Ghana, and it was just to be around something, you know, a place that's all black for a week and a half. I didn't realize how much I needed that until I came back. I was like, I hadn't even thought about being black for a week and a half. And I was like, that must be what white privilege feels like.
Man.
And I'm like, oh, you know, it's like you didn't realize you needed those spaces to get away. And so just going to the slave castles, the door of no return, you just feel this connection with your ancestry that I hadn't had before. And even just nature and all of those things. So for me, it was life-changing, changed my perspective of like what's important, what's my role here. Like I don't strive to have success in this kind of like American society. It's like I'm here for a purpose. I'm gonna live here. This is what I call home. But I don't have to buy into the ideology. You have something before slavery now to tap into, a history to explore. And I think that was mentally liberating for me.
Did you take your daughters?
Nah, they haven't been yet. We've been to the continent. We were in like Northern Africa, Morocco, Marrakesh, but they haven't been to Ghana yet. Yeah,
I took all 4 of mine, and my 7-year-old, she's 8 now, but she literally was like, "Where are the white people at?" Like it's noticeable.
It's that noticeable. Yeah. I talk about it in the book. The only white face I saw was Jesus, and they have him. White Jesus is everywhere. It's crazy. But I did bring. I brought my 2 brothers. Brought some of my frat brothers. I've been there like 4 times. The last time, and we close out the book with it, is the time I bring my parents. They always wanted to get to the continent, and so I bring them with me, and they had a blast.
Well, the brother got to go because he got TV this morning too. So you got to pick up the new book.
Oh yeah.
What winners won't tell you. We appreciate you joining us, brother. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Appreciate y'all having me for sure.
Pick up the book right now. Malcolm Jenkins. It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.